Well, they say good things come in threes, which is this case for this live stream and also potentially for Tadej Pogacar's Tour de France. We're back on stage 2 of the Tour de France. We're on our way to Nyborg, which is where the second stage of this year's Tour de France will finish. We have Crosswinds maybe on the cards. We have a flat stage ahead of us. And welcome to the Cycling Day Next channel. I'm joined once again by Patrick from Audi Cycling. 50 kilometers to go. We have about 1 hour of racing ahead of us. Patrick, what is on the cards for the riders?
So we're going to have probably about another 30 kilometers until we reach the Great Belt Bridge. So at the moment we are heading south, and so that could provide some opportunities for some crosswinds because I think it's coming from the west roughly. So there is an opportunity for some crosswinds in the next kind of 30 minutes or so before we swing onto the Great Belt Bridge, which could be just a headwind, but there is some chances where it could turn the wind and we could have maybe a cross headwind and it could get in the gutter a bit, and then we should be heading towards a sprint finale, we believe, unless there is some crazy crosswind action, in which case, all hell could break loose.
Exactly that. There could still be some problems on the run-in. Jumbo-Visma certainly present towards the front. Is this to keep Roglic safe, or is this for Wout van Aert? He's wearing the green jersey. Also see Quickstep Alpha Vinyl towards the front. Casper Asgreen, when the route was announced last autumn, said that this stage will be interesting. It could be one that splits up the peloton. I think Brian Holm this morning in L'Equipe said that the team are going to try to ride as hard as possible, as if they're trying to make it to the German border. Read into that all you will. Maybe that was poorly translated from our French journalistic friends. But you never know. Brian Holm is quite the character. We can just see number 122 on the front. This is Sven-Erik Byström, a friend of Alexander Kristoff and a teammate of Alexander Kristoff. He might be trying to get a stage win today. Don't forget, he won in Nice on a chaotic stage on the Promenade des Anglais a couple years back. Could he do the same in Nyborg? We've had a couple of stages that have big bridges, exposed areas, wind. Thinking about 2020 when we finished on the Ile de Ré. That stage won by Sam Bennett. Also back in 2015, iconic finish in Sjaeland, which was won by Andre Greipel when Fabian Cancellara took the yellow jersey. Looking at the Giro d'Italia, Fernando Gaviria took his first ever Grand Tour stage on a stage that was... It took place over a causeway. We had a big splits in the punch as well. And in the Tour de France history, we've also had the Passage du Gois and plenty of open bridges that have split up the bunch. Could today and the Storebelt be another one of those iconic bridges? It's certainly on the cards. You can see the wind on the sort of Danish and Ukrainian flags you just saw on the side of the road. They're fluttering in the wind, which shows that there certainly is some wind power battering the peloton right now. Ineos Grenadiers coming towards the front, and Van der Poel is hanging out at the back of the peloton. Patrick, should we look deeply into this? Should we analyze this more?
I guess we could do. I guess that's kind of what the beauty of cycling is. Why don't we just overanalyze this? Why is Van der Poel at the back? Van der Poel could be at the back because he is not worried about what's happening, as we actually have a nice shot just over to the Great Belt Bridge. We are within eyesight of it now. But yeah, Van der Poel obviously perhaps not too stressed about the day so far, doesn't think that there's any need to be at the front of the peloton. And like you said earlier, he is just a very good racer. He knows when he needs to be at the front. Don't need to expend and waste energy. Although he is at the back of the peloton, which does kind of create a bit more of a Constantina effect. So he will be kind of perhaps expending more energy there. He is still out of the wind, and or maybe he is just on a bad day. That is possible. Although I think that he looked okay yesterday. So unless something drastic has gone on overnight where he's eaten just, I don't know, something dodgy, I think that is kind of not really too logical. I think that he's just having a relaxed time at the back of the peloton, just enjoying a nice sunny day in Denmark.
Maybe he's had too much smørrebrød and that rye bread is getting to his stomach. You never know. What else? I mean, Denmark has a lot of culinary treats on offer, including the kernesnail, as they call it, the cinnamon snail, or cinnamon spars. It's a great bit of Danish pastries, but they're not even called Danish pastries. They're not even from here. They're from Vienna. But nevertheless, 47 kilometers to go. 40 seconds of a lead for the sole rider out up in front. Sven-Erik Byström, former world champion at the under-23 level. Hasn't had quite as much success as a senior. But today, he's going to be on the podium as the most combative rider, we believe. We've dived into the darkness in this forested area. It's good to say that it's not wet today. It's very sunny, very bright out on the roads of Denmark. And it looks like Luca Mesget has come to the front of the peloton for Team Bike Exchange Jayco, the Australian team who have high hopes with Dylan Groenewegen, who makes his Tour de France return after two emissions from this race. In 2020, he was out with injury, you could say, also with suspension. And in 2021, he opted for the Giro instead as the team focused on Wout van Aert and Roglic when he used to ride for Team Jumbo-Visma. Nowadays, he's with the Australian outlet. Took a win the other week at Rogaška Slatina at the Tour of Slovenia. Looked pretty strong there, but he wasn't quite in the same sprinting company as we have today. Other riders in the mix today, Jasper Philipsen of Alpecin de Koning, as well as Mads Pedersen, maybe of Trek's Segafredo. Wout van Aert, Fabio Jakobsen. Anyone else we're really missing out, Patrick?
I think you got the big names covered as kind of the outsiders of like Sagan, a Mozzato, Danny Van Poppel, who should have a bit more freedom considering that Sam Bennett isn't on the Bora Hansgrohe team now. He will be the kind of premier sprinter, and I think that Van Poppel, perhaps some people, it's very easy to forget about him, but he did look very good at the Bauwels Belgium Tour recently, and he also is very good at kind of very chaotic days. We saw that at the Scheldeplas earlier this year, where he finished in second place behind Alexander Kristoff. So I think that Van Poppel is a very strong rider that people shouldn't be overlooking. But yeah, you did cover most of the big sprinters in the race.
Exactly that. 45 kilometers to go on the stage. 34 seconds of a lead for the rider up in front. That is Sven-Erik Byström. Looking in the peloton right now, Pogacar looking a bit isolated. Behind him, it's number 3 for that squad. That would be the rider of Miguel Biao, who's actually Pogacar's closest buddy in this lineup. They're good friends, get along very well. On the right-hand side of the road, you can see we have Primož Roglic with his whole host of Jumbo-Visma riders who are wearing the special Masterpiece kit inspired by the history of Dutch art. I never thought I'd see a jersey that features paintings from Van Gogh and Rembrandt, but we have it here. But moving towards the front of the peloton right now, and this is Quick Step Alpha Vinyl pushing on. They have the yellow jersey of Yves Lampaert. I feel sorry for Yves Lampaert. We haven't really spoken about him much today. I'm sure plenty of commentators haven't been speaking about Yves Lampaert. A lot of the focus has been on Pogacar, it's been on Wout van Aert, and not quite so much on Yves Lampaert. It's kind of it's almost a microcosm for his career almost. He's been working in service of so many other riders for a long time, but today is his day. Let's give him the credit he deserves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I am happy for Lampaert. He's just been knocking on the door of some results for many years, and the Cobble Classics have always been his goal, but somehow they've never quite worked out apart from a couple of wins at the at kind of some of the semi-classics. But I think that he definitely deserved yesterday. I think that he just did really well around all the wet corners. He just took them really nicely, very smoothly, and just perhaps carried a bit more speed than some of the other riders like Wout van Aert or Filippo Ganna through those corners. And he is looking resplendent in his yellow jersey. And I think, well, the chances of him losing the jersey today lie in him being caught on the wrong side of a split, or potentially if Wout van Aert finishes in second place or first place, then he will gain enough bonus seconds to take the yellow jersey away from Lampaert, because I believe he is 4.5 seconds at the moment behind behind Yves Lampaert in the TT. So it is going to require a second place, as we just see a rider getting a wheel change.
I believe it's Vlasov. Nils Pollitt stops with him. It looked like the tall figure of Alexander Vlasov. It is number 41, riding for... actually, let's not mention the country he rides for. They're 21st in GC, 31 seconds back in the general classification. He gets a new bike, so he's the first of the big GC guys to have a mechanical problem on this race. But Alexander Vlasov rides away from his teammate, Nils Pollitt. I don't think he quite realized how fast he got away from that, and Nils Pollitt's trying to bridge up to him now. Vlasov, though, I think he's got the potential to be a real wild card in this Tour de France.
Yeah, certainly. He's looked really strong this year. And the only thing that has kind of cast any doubt over people is the fact that he did test positive for COVID at the recent Tour de Suisse, but he did win the stage before but before he tested positive, he won ahead of Nielsen Paulus and what was it? And Garrett Thomas and Jakob Fuglsang. I can't remember what town that finished in, but he looked very strong in that race. He won the Tour of Romandy. If you think back to way back in the Volta Comunità Valenciana, he won that kind of gravel uphill stage, which is very reminiscent of the Super Planche de Belfi. So I think that there's a lot of terrain that suits Vlasov in this race, and he has been one of the top GC riders this year, in my opinion.
Exactly that. Here comes Jakob Fuglsang making his way back to the Peloton group. Right, he was born in Geneva, but of course, Danish family rides under the Dannebrog, the Danish flag, the oldest flag in the world. They claim to be. It's the Dannebrog, the white cross on the red background. Apparently, has been Denmark's state flag since the 12th century. So there you go. Denmark, apparently the oldest state flag in the world. But Fuglsang, I mean, he's a rider. I don't think he spent much time in Denmark over his career. Did race here a little bit when he was a teenager, but he spent a lot of his life outside of Denmark. Used to live in Luxembourg as well, close to very close to the Schleck brothers. They rode for the same team for a number of years too. But Fuglsang at the back of the peloton just made his way back in. You can see Groenewegen in the middle of the bunch there for bike exchange. He's got a whole train of riders in front of him. Also, Antomarche up towards the front. I've got to say, Louis Meintjes posted a brilliant time trial yesterday. How do you rate his chances for the GC? I think he's got a really good shot at making top 10.
He was really good at the Dauphiné and actually caught me a little bit off guard by how good he did, especially on the up to the Plateau de Soleilson. He was really in good company there and very rolling back the clock to the Louis Meintjes that we saw back in when he was riding for, I think it was UAE back in the day in like 2017 or so, where he was really touted as this big GC prospect where he was finishing inside the top 10 of the Tour de France. And, you know, getting through the TT yesterday, considering that's one of his weak points, as we just see Vlasov getting into the back of the peloton now. Yeah, Meintjes has looked really good recently, and it wouldn't surprise me if he finished inside the top 10 of the Tour this year. The big problem for him is going to be that 40-kilometer individual time trial on stage 20, but that is a long way away. There's a lot of racing between now and then, lots of mountains to get through that will suit him more, so maybe he can put enough time into some of his other competitors to try and hold on to a top 10 in GC, which I think would be a very realistic goal for him to try and achieve this year.
Exactly that. Antomarche been going through leaps and bounds in 2022. Binyam Girmay, of course. Also Jan Hirt, a fantastic Giro. I think we overlooked it maybe a little bit at the time, but Jan Hirt there with a 6th place and a stage win, that's absolutely fantastic. Many riders would be content with that, especially at the age of 31 when you didn't really think you had a contract ahead of you. Nevertheless, there's a crash, I believe, at the back, or at least there's a pile-up. No, there's a crash.
For an Israel rider.
Is that number 1 or is that number 7? It's number 7 there for Israel Premier Tech. That looks like it's Chris Neylands. It is. And it's also a rider from DSM on the ground. The rider from DSM is... just trying to get a closer look at him. Is it Andreas Leknesund?
Oh, yeah.
It's number 7. No, Martin Tusveld, who just came from the Giro d'Italia. In fact, half of DSM's team have come from the Giro d'Italia, which I don't think is a great decision from them.
Yeah, I agree with you. When I saw their lineup, I did think, what's going on here? I can understand Bardet coming because, of course, he did leave the Giro d'Italia early because of illness, and I think that's fair. He didn't get the whole 3 weeks of racing in his legs. But yeah, I must agree with you. I think that perhaps DSM, do they lack the depth in their squad, considering that they are a very young team? Do they kind of lack the depth in the squad to they have to take the same riders to multiple races because they're kind of A-lister riders like an Alberto Dainese, who of course won a stage of the Giro d'Italia?
Ooh, yep.
See Tuchfeld stop again.
Yeah, Tusveld, I think, needs a new bike. One of his team cars just drove right past him. Oh no, the other one is waiting for him. Okay, that's all. That's all
Yeah.
good. Um, yeah, I mean, Dainese, we'll wait and see what he can bring. He won the Parmesan stage of the Giro.
Mm.
We're far away from Parmesan country right now, but I'm not quite sure if he has a Tour de France win in his legs yet. That Giro win was a bit of a surprise, but he really rode into that race. He rode strongly in that final week. On the stage won by Dries de Bont, he was right up there in the sprint as well in the pack. Maybe he'll do something special. A rider who had a disappointing Giro, Caleb Ewan, is up towards the France. I think he's starting this Tour de France maybe with a more incognito profile, thanks to that disappointing ride at the Giro. Do you reckon that's a good thing for him?
Yeah, I think it is. Perhaps Lotto Soudal coming in with a different strategy without a whole kind of like the full blown lead out that they sometimes take to races, and they're taking a bit more of a trimmed down version with a couple more kind of stage hunters in Vellens, Clon, and Philippe Gilbert. And perhaps they're just going to try fly a little bit under the radar, position Caleb well, and let him, with his savvy racecraft in the finale, try and take a win by surfing the wheels, perhaps. And I think that it's a good strategy, and I think that they can benefit off of the strength of other lead-out trains to try and get the victory that way.
Exactly that. We'll wait and see if he can do so. 39 kilometers to go on the dot. 28 seconds for Sven Erik Busteram. And I'm seeing an awful lot of Israel Premier Tech guys at the back of the peloton. They've brought a number of Canadians here this year. They've brought Hugo Hule and Guillaume Boivin. We've also seen Rusty Woods as well in that lineup too. How could I forget? And another Canadian in Antoine Duchesne. It passed me by that yesterday was Canada Day. So we missed out on that one, but there was no Canadian success yesterday. I don't think it's going to come today. And I mean, soon, the next big national day will be the 4th of July. But there'll be no American success, not because they're not strong enough, but because there'll be no racing on the 4th of July this year, which is a shame for the Americans. Nevertheless, we're looking back to Pat Conrad, who won last year in Saint-Gaudens. He is just rolling at the back of the peloton for Bora Hansgrohe, now wearing their normal trade team kit. The Austrian champions jersey is now on the back of Felix Großschartner. Bora were caught up in a bit of a scandal during the week following that Austrian championships with a suspicious video that surfaced on Twitter, but they're in the clear for the time being. Nevertheless, Sven-Erik Busteram still up in front, 30 seconds of a gap for this Norwegian. This is the closest he's ever come to his homeland at a Grand Tour. And I'm sure he'll be savouring the moments before he hits the Great Belt Bridge in about 10 or so kilometres time.
Yeah, you just see that flag. Well, the flags are all blowing straight into the faces of the peloton at the moment. So it's going to be a pretty torrid time for poor Sven-Erik Bystrøm at the moment, battling away into the headwind. I think any of us who have ridden a bike into a headwind can all sympathise with poor Sven-Erik Bystrøm at the moment as he sees just about having a nice, lovely time out there in the water. But yeah, I think you've got Conrad's looking down at his bag. He just seems to be a little bit unhappy with that. But Bora bring a really strong team, in my opinion. Lots of brilliant climbers, riders to support Vlasov. You've got Leonard Kemner, who looked really good at the Giro d'Italia. Conrad, as we said, won a stage last year. Felix Großschartner, a rejuvenated Max Schachmann, who kind of had a bit of I don't know, downtime, didn't quite look himself from kind of the end of last year through the spring this year, but really kind of refound himself a bit at the Tour de Suisse recently. And that was kind of his first big success since the Paris-Nice of 2021, where he won ahead of Primož Roglic, who crashed on that last stage. So I think that Bora Hansgrohe have got a really strong and versatile team for this race, with kind of headman of Alexander Vlasov, as the peloton is just all spread across the road. All the sprinters' teams keeping themselves nicely towards the front alongside Ineos Grenadiers and Jumbo-Visma.
Yeah, just seeing Franck Bonnamour at the back there, last year's most combative rider, wearing the number 1 for B&B Hotels. He's out of the mix. He said in L'Equipe the other day that he wants to get a top 20 in GC again, but we'll wait and see if that's possible. Maybe last year's Tour de France was a bit of a fluke, but We haven't quite seen the same results from Font Bonamont recently, but you never know on the roads of the Tour de France. Just on the left-hand side of the screen, I can see the coat hanger come towards the front. This is Steven Kruijswijk. Yeah, former podium finisher on the Tour de France, being used up to position Wout van Aert and Primoz Roglic ahead of what could be a difficult section on the Great Belt Bridge. I think just comparing Jumbo's approach to UAE, Pogacar's just got Miguel Biao next to him. Pogacar's up here safe, looking not particularly flustered at all. Jumbo-Visma looking quite panicked, jumping about the road at left, right and centre. And they have their whole team towards the front. I reckon UAE are putting in less input into this race than Jumbo-Visma. As we just see one of the riders there from EF shouting at Antoine Duchesne of Francis Desjeux. I wonder what happened there.
I don't really know what happened there. I just saw that. I was just really confused. He looked like Duchesne grabbed his helmet and, I don't know, tried to, I don't know, steer his head in some way.
Yeah.
I don't really know what happened there.
That's not a great look between him and Ruben Guerreiro of EF. Yeah.
Guerrero's looking really good at the moment, isn't he?
Oh,
he very strong at the Dauphiné, and he won the Mont Ventoux Challenge.
Yeah, I think Guerrero's a good pick for the polka dots this year. Certainly as a good ride at the Tour de France. I'm upset we can't see Marc Pedun here at the Tour de France. I think he could have done something special in the mountains, maybe win a stage up there. But EF certainly could be up there in the breakaways. Uran, though, had a very disappointing time yesterday. Not great in the opening TT. So maybe he'll be looking for stage wins instead of the general classification. But he can't really keep his hands off of the GC. He's got a good record at this race.
I could also see EF doing quite well. I know it's a little bit of a, it's not a main goal, but I could see them doing quite well in the team classification, actually. They've got lots of good climbers, and they usually get them a breakaway. I think they've got a strong chance of doing that. They've got Nielsen Paulus, Guerrero, Magnus Cort Nielsen, Alberto Bettiol. We've got riders for every kind of terrain, and I could see them really being menaces in the breakaway. I'd be surprised if they weren't in the majority of breakaways that go this year.
Exactly that. And Nielsen Paulus, certainly a guy who's knocking on the door for big time success. Really, really strong rider from the United States of America. The only American on that team. There's 8 different riders from 8 different countries for EF Easy Post, who are rocking a Palace special edition kit. Yes, the skateboarding brand have brought in a special edition kit for this year's Tour de France, which marks the parity between men and women, between the Tour de France Femme, which starts in 3 weeks' time, and the Tour de France Homme, as you could call it. That's the team are setting off in once again. I must draw your attention, though, to the absolutely fantastic special edition Crocs that the team have been given. I think it's fantastic. I'm hoping to see Magnus Cort in special polka dot Crocs on the final podium. Yeah. That would be quite the drip, I must say.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, I think I like the teams bringing out different kits. I know that I've seen some arguments saying, "Oh, well, it's not great for if new fans come in, they kind of get confused because it's like, well, then it's kind of like a limited edition sort of kit." But at the same time, you have to bear in mind that new kits bring media attention, and kind of it doesn't matter if your kit's ugly or attractive to whoever. If it brings media attention, it is doing the job that it is designed to do.
Yeah, I feel like the argument on changing your kits is a bit redundant. Changing our kit should be fine, all these new guys into cycling, they can learn all about it. If they're eager enough to learn about the Tour de France and how it operates, they'll be able to pick apart all these jerseys. This isn't an easy sport to understand. I'm sure they have eyes, and they'll be able to recognize certain colors that change. I mean, I recognize Mark Van Aert right now, even if he's wearing the green jersey, and that's a bit of a jersey change, isn't it? So there we go. That's my soapbox.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah, I mean, in your opinion, what's the best jersey change of this year's Tour de France? There's, I think, 5 to choose from.
I think I like Bora's the best, I really like the white. I think it's good, and it's also, although there is, looking down from this aerial shot now on the Peloton, there is an awful lot of white, actually. It does make it perhaps a little bit more difficult. But when it's like a motorbike shot, I do think that Bora Hansgrohe kit looks the best. What about you? Which one do you like best?
I would probably agree on Bora. I like EF as well. I just think it's a cool idea. I think
Mm.
definitely I noticed people who aren't interested in cycling got really behind the first Palace one. I think the first Palace one was far more Palace though. This
Yeah.
one feels like that. What this is more an EF thing that they've done, and Palace just signed off on the promo that so they can sell it on their store for a lot of money.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
I don't like the new Alpecin kit. I know they had to change the color of blue to fit the Koenig, but the old shade of blue was good. It was unique. Now it's just in the this shade of blue just gets swamped by the rest in the bunch. It's very similar to the current Quickstep Alpha Vinyl kit. The new Trek Zegafredo kit as well just gets swamped in the Peloton, especially when they had a brilliant kit before. I think it's a shame they changed it. And the Lotto one is just it's an eyesore. Christ. Um, Sometimes I actually did have a dream the other night that I was visually impaired, and sometimes I wish that dream was a reality because that is a real monstrosity for the eyes.
Yeah, Beastrom's just dangling out there at 10 seconds, just probably just waiting for this Peloton to pick up the pace a bit and swallow him up so we can get a nice little bit of respite in the group there. But, he's done a really good job as Beastrom here today as we zoom in on the Alpecin de Koenig, not Alpecin Phoenix, Alpecin de Koenig train. And Mathieu van der Poel, he has moved up from the back of the Peloton now at this point.
Yep, Van der Poel making his way up. You can see Jasper Philipsen as well, making his way towards the front. Alpecin de Koenig, who, there are a couple of rumors circulating them for next year. We know Tim Merlier is out. Søren Kragh Andersen looks to be coming in, according to Daniel Benson over at Velo News. That's going to be a fun transfer if it's true. Søren Kragh Andersen, who was not picked for this year's Tour de France following, debates at Team DSM, despite his 2-stage wins of the Tour de France. And we cross over to the convoy. It's Christopher Froome, who, come on, Israel Premier Tech. There was an open goal of putting Chris Froome in the breakaway today.
Yeah, you know what? As we just say that, looks like Quickstep are lighting it up on the front as the breakaway is being caught, trying to catch people napping. Jumbo-Visma are matching them as it's just chaos in the peloton now, Ewan. What's going on?
This is impressive stuff. I'm trying to work out which Quickstep rider it is. I know Casper Asgreen wanted to rip things up here. Sven Erik Bostrom is back. And swinging around the corner now, it's Quickstep Alpha Vinyl putting on the pace. To their right, this is Jumbo-Visma trying to get on board in the chaos. Where is Pogacar? We're trying to find it out. We can see Miguel Biel, so I believe he is in a safe pace. Florian Sénéchal, right from the north of France, is also in the mix here too. This looks to be, maybe, I think it's Miguel Honoré now pushing on at the front for Denmark and for Quickstep Alpha Vinyl, trying to get a stage win with Fabio Jacobsen, the Hurricane sprinter from the Netherlands. On the right-hand side of the road, though, this looks to be Nathan van Hooijdonk trying to keep Wout van Aert safe. Is this too early to use up Van Hooijdonk, though? That is the question. If they want a stage win with Van Aert, well, we thought Van Hooijdonk, Laporte were the main reinforcements for him, but if Hooijdonk is being used up this early on, maybe that's too early in terms of reinforcing Van Aert's sprint train. We haven't seen him surf the wheels an awful lot. Nevertheless, this is Pipo Ganna now making his way towards the front. Oof, this means business.
It sure does. I think, that was a strange acceleration. It looks like Quickstep kind of, I don't know, maybe they're testing the water, seeing how fast people responded, see if they could catch anybody napping. But it looks like they, going into that corner, I think perhaps they were hoping that the wind would perhaps be a bit stronger or in a better direction for them to continue on. But it looks like everybody was kind of aware of it, and you've now got some, like you say, we've got the kind of big domestiques more moving towards the front now, so that is clearly a bit more serious, like a Filippo Ganna. Of course, got the winner of Paris-Roubaix, Dylan van Baarle. He is at the front of the Ineos train. On the right-hand side of the picture, you've got Quickstep in the middle. Geraint Thomas is being kept in third wheel on that Ineos train. You've got the Jumbo-Visma bubble with Pogacar almost trying to blend into the coattails of that Jumbo-Visma train and perhaps benefit from all the work that they're doing by just sitting on them without having to expend too many of his own teammates in the process. There's only Michael Bjerg a few places in front of him, actually. So you've clearly got a little bit of tension building up as we go through 30 kilometers to go.
Exactly that, and it looks like Jumbo-Visma is... They've been given the impetus to ride, but maybe they're investing too much into this. Pogacar is getting a bit of a free ride. This is one of the big days where they could make a difference in this Tour de France, in getting time into Pogacar when he's least expecting it. But, I mean, the irony in that is that this stage has been earmarked by many for a long, long time for the potential crosswinds over this bridge. So maybe the riders are too prepared for it. We know this phenomenon. It's happened a lot in cycling where the riders are very prepared for stages. They practice for it and they know what's going to happen. Maybe that's going to happen today over the Storbergsbron. Through the center, I can see that looks like Florian Vermeersch working for Caleb Ewan. Also, Olivier Legac for Groupama. I'm mightily intrigued to see what Groupama are going to bring. They've invested a lot today, but for what? That is the question. We're just seeing now on television the replay between the rider from Groupama Forces des Jeux and Ruben Guerrero. Not quite sure what that's all about. Maybe he was annoyed about how close Ruben Guerrero was going to him, but I don't think you're allowed to do that. There must be a UCI rule in tampering with other riders' helmets.
Yeah, I don't really know what's going on here. It's about I still can't make head or tail of it. Really, I think but hopefully something will be explained of it at the end of the stage by some kind of media outlet, and we can kind of figure that out. But yeah, that was a very strange move. Something that I can't remember the last time I've ever really seen anybody do that. As we get a great shot of the Great Belt where we are heading in roughly 10 kilometers time, I think it is, and foreboding look, and Peloton all kind of flat across the front, all just kind of colour blocking at the moment, trying to keep their position, just trying to keep themselves out of trouble. You've got all the big kind of riders there. I can see Roglic. I can see just the top of Pogacar's helmet. He's roughly 5 people deep from the front, kind of towards just behind Caleb Ewan. You've also got the Quick Step team there with Lampart and Seneschal Honore. And yeah, it's just everybody just seems to be waiting for this big, great belt kind of finale, and hopefully it lives up to the expectations that we've all got for it, Ewan.
Exactly. I'm just doing some digging online, trying to find out what the problem is between these two riders. In fact, I'm corrected. It is Stefan Küng instead of Antoine Duchesne. Similar frame, also a former national champion. But Stefan Küng there, handling the helmet of Ruben Guerrero, the former Portuguese road race champion. But 27k to go. We're getting closer and closer to the Storbergsbron. It's 17 kilometers long. There is a bit of respite. We go up a ramp to begin with. We are elevated over the sea. I know Michael Merkel was joking in the press this morning that that some riders could always crash into the sea, but I don't think that's going to happen today. We're going on one side of the road. The whole bridge has been closed off, though. It's been closed for 6 hours before this stage, which is incredible. So I feel sorry for people trying to leave the island of Foon to escape across the water. You are trapped for the time being. Nevertheless, Christian Prudhomme came here in 2017 when Denmark were negotiating the Grand Départ. I mean, he's trying to find a place spectacular that could spark up the racing, because he's always questioned when the Tour de France goes abroad, because the French journalists ask, why do you want to go abroad? And he wanted to prove them wrong. So he found this bridge, actually online. He was doing a lot of digging online to try to find somewhere that could possibly bring crosswinds, since Denmark was a windy country. He came here in November 2017, did a reconnaissance of the bridge. He actually went up one of these pylons that's 200 meters above the water, just to suss things out. And from there on onwards, he knew that Nyborg was the destination for the stage finish, even if the Tour de France, the bidding city, actually originally wanted the finish to be in Odense, which is 30 kilometers away from Nyborg. But Christian Prudhomme wasn't for budging. He made sure that the finish would be just after the bridge in Nyborg. So that's the story of why we're here. And this could be a spectacular 17 kilometers of racing. We've seen crosswinds in the past couple of years of the Tour de France. Pogacar infamously lost a minute in the crosswinds in the Tarn department of France, right on the foot of the Pyrenees. There is where Thibaut Pinot similarly lost a bunch of time in 2019 rather. Could we see crosswinds here in Scandinavia? It could certainly happen today. Jumbo-Visma coming towards the front. They look safe with Pogacar surfing the wheels of Total Energies and Peter Sagan. Looks like Pogacar's safe for the time being, isn't he?
Yeah, it definitely looks that way, and he's expending very kind of few teammates in doing so as well, which is a good thing considering that a lot of his team are more climbers. So it does kind of make sense to try and kind of not use them, considering that they're not going to be particular specialists. But yeah, we've still got Tish Benoit at the front of Jumbo-Visma on the left-hand side of the picture. Florian Vermeersch, Mikkel Frolic-Honore, Olivier Legac, and Filippo Ganna. Those are the riders on the front of the peloton as we just go through the gantry of 25 kilometers to go. Everybody just kind of looking at each other, just making sure that nobody's doing anything, kind of just accelerating and trying to catch everybody off guard. As you just see, I believe it's Frederick Frison who's just accelerated to the front of the peloton to provide a little bit more kind of protection for Caleb Ewan, who now sits in third wheel of that Lotto train. Yeah, you've got Jumbo-Visma on the right, Ineos on the left, and Pogacar nicely nestled in the middle of the peloton, about 8 wheels back.
Pogacar looks safe for the time being. We wonder where Vlasov is. He had a problem earlier on with his bike. I can see that looks like Jasper Steve, I believe, in the center of the bunch, is also here. He would like it if it gets tough. But he's going to be working for his buddy Mads Pedersen towards the end, who also is nestled right through the center of the image. Mads Pedersen not far off of the yellow jersey as well, let's not forget. We're talking about Wout van Aert an awful lot about whether he can get the yellow jersey, but don't forget, Mads Pedersen does not sit far back in GC. He sits just 15 seconds behind Yves Lampaert. So if he targets these next 2 stages, it's certainly possible for Mads Pedersen to take the Maillot Jaune. Nevertheless, it looks like Quickstep Alpha Vinyl moved towards the front. Quickstep working to keep the jersey on the back of Yves Lampaert, but more importantly, get a stage win with Fabio Jakobsen, who a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago now, we didn't think would be riding a bike again. But he's here at the Tour de France, and he's certainly in contention for his first ever Tour de France stage win, and maybe even a green jersey campaign. Tish Benoit on the right-hand side of the road. Tish Benoit, the only cyclist I know of who's named after a country singer. He makes his way towards the front. In the wheels now, it includes Wout van Aert. Can he get the stage win and the Maillot Jaune today? It's certainly on the cards.
23.4 kilometers to go. It's all just kind of hotting up. See Castroviejo at the back of the peloton. Looks like perhaps his work is done for the day. He has been on the front an awful lot. I think that's also Sven-Erik Bistrom at the back, who I must say, it was a little bit unfair when he got caught and all of a sudden there was a big acceleration. Just when he thought he was going to get a nice, easy time in the peloton, all of a sudden we all go absolutely steaming past him. He must have just thought, oh, well, that's just my luck, isn't it? As we take a right-hand turn, hopefully nobody hits that traffic island. Doesn't look like anybody did. We're all through there safely. As we just get a wind graphic on the right-hand side. Looks like it's a cross headwind at the moment. I think it is. Cross headwind, kind of headwind at the moment. So not much will be happening, but that could mean that when we get onto this the Great Belt, that there could be a bit of crosswind action, actually, Ewan.
There could be a whiplash on the Great Belt Bridge. Certainly possible. Number 174 at the back here is Alex Kirsch from Luxembourg. He's not going to be getting involved in that train that he is a vital part of for Mads Pedersen. We just get the overhead view. This bridge is being closed for 6 hours. Only the press and the team cars can get through. Of course, emergency vehicles as well, just in case. But we cross back now to the Tête de la Course, which is also the peloton. We can see Jonas Vingegaard safe. We can see Roglic is safe towards the front. Kevin Genietz is moving towards the front as well. Caleb Ewan bobbing about too. He's got Brent van Moer in front of him. Problem for number 141. That's Rigoberto Urán with a problem for EF Easy Post. Once again, it's a chain issue for EF. I mean, yesterday we saw Stefan Bissiger's chain completely off of the bike. And this is a problem for DSM. This is a big problem for DSM. Their riders on the ground. I think this is Martin Tusveld again.
Oh, if it is that, it's going to be very rough. It could be Kevin Vermarker, possibly, but it looks like Arana is going to need a bike change, which isn't great timing with 21.5 kilometers to go. The Peloton is a little bit splinters. There are two little groups of roughly 10 riders each off the back of the Peloton right now, kind of clawing their way back. But the Peloton is still a relatively big bunch of riders. Iran is now out in the open by himself. He doesn't have a teammate around him, although a teammate did also look to have a mechanical problem at the same time as him. So we'll see what's going to happen. But it doesn't look like there's going to be any quarter given at the front of the peloton. So we've got Jumbo-Visma and Bahrain Victorious have now shown their heads towards the front of the peloton as we now charge towards the Great Belt Bridge. And there's definitely a bit more chaos going on in the peloton now.
Yep, number 118. This is Kevin Marco. Good spot. Who came down in the crash. Yeah, he had a solid Tour de Suisse, if I recall. But yeah, not quite as much luck here today at the Tour de France. But the riders are about to get on this bridge. We're about to go uphill very quickly, and the peloton is panicking. It's fanning out. We went through the toll system there. The riders don't have to pay, of course, but it's Bahrain Victorious who are trying to bully their way towards the front. But Bora are back here. It's actually Alexander Vlasov himself, Sasha, who's right at the front of the peloton. So he's found himself in a good position. Luke Rowe on the right-hand side of the road is pushing through. Behind him is that the figure of Adam Yates. He always looks like his saddle's just a little bit too low, but it is Adam Yates. Next to him is Geraint Thomas. So Ineos are safe. Also, I mean, it's time for Connor Swift to come through. This is the kind of stage that Connor Swift could do something very special in. Nairo Quintana said in L'Equipe this morning that he's very comfortable about the prospect of Crosswinds. Also, they have a very good sprinter in the form of Ugo Ostetter, he's a bullish sprinter. He could do very well today.
Yeah, and interestingly, that Danish flag at the start of the bridge was blowing. As the images at the moment, it's blowing over the left-hand shoulders of the peloton. So this does have possibilities of forming into echelons, but this is a very long bridge, it must be stated. It's not going to be just like in the Cobble Classics where there's sometimes a few kilometers only to do the damage. This could ignite at any point, and it could be maybe just people just stare at each other for a few kilometers, and maybe it's just going to just steadily come to a boil the longer we go across this bridge. But it's just chaos at the moment. It's kind of very few trains all together. There's riders scattered all over. It's very disjointed, very chaotic. We jump back to Iran now, who does have a teammate with him.
Big crash.
They are
big crash. Big crash through the center of the picture. A lot of riders down. Yves Lampart's involved. Yves Lampart is down, number 187 as well. Oh, this looks like Ruben Guerrero has been down too. There's a rider, number 7 there for UAE. That is Marc Soler, I think, has been involved. A big crash in the center of the peloton. So Yves Lampart involved. He got onto his feet. He did a little bit of a twirl there as he hit the concrete, but he got up straight away when he's worried about getting his bike back. Another rider as well from Quickstep Vinyl trying to work out how this crash happened. It's the EF rider just in front of Lampard who comes down.
It looks like Guerrero just went out the saddle and just rode into the back of a Total Direct Energies rider, just overlapped, and but Guerrero is just got straight up by the looks of things. So he looks okay, perhaps grabbing his wrist. But it looks like, Lampard is okay, but a couple of riders were on the ground, unfortunately. So that's not great to see. But Lampard is back up. I'm not sure if he's back in the peloton yet, though, Ewan, is he?
He hasn't
I can't see him
yet as part of the peloton. Sorry, Marc Soler is fine. So it must have been another rider from UAE, as I thought I saw the number 7 on the back of the rider on the ground. Apologies for the misidentification, but I believe Ancien Turgis came down in that crash for Total, so that could be a big loss for them. We pan down, and I believe Yves Lampart is in that second group, which is going to make it back very soon. Is this now a matter of courtesy to let Yves Lampart in?
I think it's difficult to say. It's all that unwritten rule, isn't it? Oh, he's not in the second group. He's actually behind his team car now. But yeah, this is going to be it might be difficult for him to get back in. But yeah, I think if you follow the unwritten rules of cycling, technically Lampart, like the pace would be eased off, or at least not accelerated, and Lampart would kind of not be allowed to get back in. But he wouldn't be put into a disadvantageous position to not be allowed back in, if you see what I mean. So yeah, but it doesn't look like anybody nobody's massively pushing it along outside of what was the pace already. So I think that Lampard should get back in.
Yeah, Lampard. It looks like it's now UAE with Marc Soler and Miguel Biao towards the front of the peloton, trying to keep things in order. 18 kilometers to go. Bahrain as well, moving towards the front. Lotto Soudal have sorted out a neat-looking train. Van der Poel is safe, and Phillips are around him. Bike Exchange are trying to sort out their train for Dylan Groenewegen as well. Lampard's taken on a new bike. That is one thing that's interesting, which might have slowed him down. You can tell because he doesn't have the number on the back part underneath his saddle. So he's definitely taken a new bike for Quickstep Alpha Vinyl, and he's got a teammate behind him, trying to work out who that is. It looks like it could be... Is it Michael Murko? If it is, that could be a big blow. It is Michael Murko. So Michael Murko came down in that crash as well, which is not great news for Fabio Jakobsen.
Well, they'll have to rearrange that sprint train for sure. Seneschal is still up there, so perhaps he might have to now de facto as the lead-out man for Fabio Jakobsen, which I think is something that Seneschal has done in the past, so it's not going to be a massive disadvantage. But is that Murkov on the wheel, like just behind?
Yeah.
I believe it is, so it depends. If Lampard gets back in, then Murkov will also get back in, and then they'll be able to get back. But just drafting in the convoy right now, moving up on the right-hand side of the cars, which is sensible because the wind is coming from the left-hand side, which is why there is such a threat of crosswinds going over this bridge right now. But nobody seems to be massively taking advantage of it, maybe because of the kind of unwritten rule, which perhaps frowns upon putting the yellow jersey in trouble when he has been involved in a crash.
Exactly that, and there's a problem there for Yves Lampard, but I think it seems to be under control. The peloton now have 16 or so seconds of an advantage over him. Is anybody going to be brave enough to challenge the yellow jersey? This could be Wout van Aert's lucky day, but he would probably want to get it in his own right. But Yves Lampard maybe has lost a lot of energy, but he'll be running high on momentum after that crash. It looked like it would have hurt. He came off, landed on his legs, sort of did a bit of a gallop before coming down. It's like Julien Alaphilippe's crash back at Strada Bianca. Yeah, he seems okay for the time being, but there's now 13 seconds of a gap. Also back here is number 55. This is Miguel Honoré, the other Miguel from Denmark, who has come back to help Michael Murko and Yves Lampard. But 8 seconds now. It looks like they're going to make it back up towards the front. In the wheels as well, that looks like it's Fabio Feline of Astana Premier Tech. Sorry, Astana Kazakhstan. That's Kazakhstan with a Q, who is also in this trail of riders making it back. We pan around, and he's back. Yves Lampard is back in this group. It's Gruppo Compacto once again at the Tour de France.
Yeah, and it looks like everybody's just... It's definitely a bit twitchy in the peloton at the moment. You can just... Riders are kind of, going out the saddle and at some points, and, it's just all just occasionally an overlap of wheels. It all just seems a little bit nervous at the moment, but still this wind hasn't really taken the effect of that perhaps Christian Prudhomme was hoping that it would at the moment. But yeah, saying that, I don't know, the teams are always just kind of rolling to the front, and all it takes is just one team to light the touch paper, and then all chaos will break loose. Bahrain definitely swamped towards the front now. It's probably one of the few times that I've seen them towards the front, which is actually quite a good thing. If you generally don't see people, that means that they've been saving quite a bit of energy.
Yeah, Fred Wright maybe could be a name for top 10 at this stage of the Tour de France. He had a very good Paris-Nice, a good Spring Classics campaign, and he's here now for Bahrain victorious. They don't have Phil Bauhaus for the sprint, so it's all out for Fred Wright if he can. But they're also trying to keep Caruso and Haig safe, both of whom had pretty miserable time trials, it's safe to say. Michael Storr has been dropped here, so that is interesting news for him. Also, we'll look at Michael Cherel as well for AG2R Citroën, who had a good Giro d'Italia last May.
Yeah.
But through the centre, this looks to be the big figure of Kamil Gradek, who surprised many in his inclusion in this Tour de France start list. But the pole, the former Tour of China winner, is towards the front. Also, B&B Hotels trying to get something for Luca Mozzato. Is it going to be his day today?
I think that Mozzato definitely benefits from more chaos, or perhaps maybe a little bit of a lumpier day, kind of perhaps what we might see around like Calais. Just because if you think back, Mazart had a very good Trobro Leon earlier this year, where he was just beaten by Ugo Hofstetter and a very strong Arkea Samsic. And I think he benefits from that very chaotic, one day esque kind of style of racing, which perhaps isn't seen right here, right now. But I reckon that Mazzato could certainly be in a chance of launching a bit of a surprise day, maybe getting inside the top 5 if things go his way.
Exactly that. You can see the windsock blowing away in the wind. It does look like it is a crosswind, but it's not crazy. It's not nothing that the riders that's going to rip up this peloton. I don't think. This is feeling a little bit like that stage back at the Ile de Ré in 2020, when crosswinds were expected over a long bridge, but nothing happened. It seems like the winds aren't quite strong enough for chaos today, but every rider is incredibly alert of the possibility thereof. So we're almost halfway through the Storbelbron, and nothing has happened in terms of crosswind gaps. We have had some crashes. We've seen Yves Lampart on the deck. We've seen Michael Mirko on the deck. But in a second group on the road, we have Rigoberto Uran, who's surrounded by teammates from EF Education Easy Post. But all is safe for the major GC contenders of Pogacar, Roglic, and Vinigo. Here come Total Energies, who bring forward Mathieu Bourgodeau, who had a nasty crash at the French Nationals, but his victory earlier on this year at Paris-Nice is certainly more notable. We're almost at the halfway point. We're going to make it down to this island. This island actually used to be it was a mental hospital where women, sort of socially unaccepted women were sent, prostitutes, mentally ill, disabled, were all sent to this island back in the day as a sort of a form of punishment. Nowadays, it's going to be on the Tour de France as we make our transition onto a lower bridge, which means that the wind will still be battering the riders, but not quite from the same elevation as this higher part of the Storbelbron. But this also means we're going to be on a slight descent right now as we make our way down onto the lower bridge.
Yeah, we just cut back to Uran now. He has 3 teammates around him. But yeah, thinking about the peloton, it's definitely going to be slightly more advantageous to be on the right-hand side of the peloton with this wind direction. So Jumbo-Visma are in a very prime position at the moment towards the front, but towards the right-hand side. So saving a lot of energy in that sense, versus somebody like Bike Exchange was actually on the left-hand side, eating a lot of wind there. And perhaps that might play a part. Maybe it'll kind of null the legs of some of their riders. But, there's still a long way to go. And, like you say, the wind isn't overly strong enough to cause crosswinds, so maybe it's not causing too much kind of issue for those riders on the front at the moment, as we are now just, as you say, approaching this island, and yes, roughly about halfway over this bridge. So it's crazy to think how long this bridge is actually, as we just see Lampard yelling at somebody.
17 kilometers in total. We have 6 kilometers in one half, 6 kilometers on the other half, and this island section, which is a couple of kilometers as well. I'm not sure if you saw that shot between Geraint Thomas and Sepp Kuss. They were talking there. Sepp Kuss pulled a face of, meh, this is pretty easy. And Geraint Thomas almost laughed with him, sort of accepting and agreeing with him. The pace is high, but this isn't quite as chaotic as we may have thought. We can see Daniel Oss is now talking to his former teammates from Bora Hansgrohe as well. I think all is good in the hood, to be honest, in this peloton. Seems like everyone is getting through this quite calmly. We're on the bridge, though. The former sort of destination for social outcast women. But we're going to soon be on this almost causeway-style bridge, which should be a little easier for these riders. But they'll take a little ramp down. So they'll lose about 30-40 meters of altitude, so that could speed the peloton up a little bit. As we see Cofidis come towards the front. Is this for Max Walscheid?
You'd expect so. It's also going to have the additional benefit of protecting their GC leaders of, I believe it's Jonas Agir and Guillaume Martin are going for GC4 for Cofidis. So, but yes, also Walscheid would be their premier sprinter for the day. As we just see, just the riders all taking it some fairly easy. We try and sneak around a little shot of Primoz Roglic, who's on the right-hand side of the peloton, seems to be taking it pretty easy, having a relatively stress-free crossing of this bridge. We also seen Kasper Asgreen Florian Seneschal, and Peter Sagan. You know, perhaps he was hoping it would be a bit more chaotic than it is at the moment. We've also got Nairo Quintana, the expert crosswind rider. I'm always amazed by how well Nairo Quintana survives crosswinds. You know, whenever he goes to Paris, I'm always amazed whenever there's splits that he's always in that front group.
Well, he might be having nightmares about the stage that was in Sjaeland a couple of years back when he lost a minute and a half or so. That was, in the end, the difference between victory and second place in the 2015 Tour de France. Also still up here, Wout van Aert, who looks a bit miserable right now. Maybe he was hoping for things to be a little bit harder. Also, his team have invested an awful lot. We saw Kruijswijk on the front. We saw Tish Benoot. We saw these guys, Sepp Kuss even, setting the pace. Did they not learn any lessons from 2020? They were doing the same thing on the stage at the Ile de Ré when Roglic was in yellow. And then in a couple of weeks' time, everything imploded. They couldn't tame Pogacar in the end. But we wait and see. Hindsight's 2020, but for the time being, it's B&B Hotels who are investing. For Luca Mozzato, I mean, if any stage is going to be a chaotic stage, I think a first road stage of a Grand Tour could certainly be that day. Mozzato might like that. As you said, Trobo-Leon, that's a chaotic stage in the team's home region of Brittany.
Yeah, certainly. And I think that they're really setting out their stall early, perhaps preempting the crosswinds that might be happening as we cut back again to Iran, who has now lost a teammate. What's going on here?
Well, I think
as just a DSM rider pushes him back into third wheel, saying, I'm not coming through for a turn here. But yeah, Iran's lost a teammate. But there are cars in front of him, it's worth saying, and the gap has come down. It was 1 minute 17, whereas it is now 48 seconds. So they are eating into this gap to the Peloton, but it's still going to be very difficult to try and kind of bring it back. And it's interesting to note that there are still EF riders in the Peloton, so they haven't all been brought back in a everybody needs to get around Iran sort of style. They perhaps just have a different agenda with some different riders who maybe somebody like Nielsen Paulus hasn't been brought back because of how good he is looking at the moment. Perhaps he could do something later on into this race. We just cut to Vlasov having a nice relaxing time.
Exactly. Vlasov, he always looks very rigid on the bike, but in quite an aesthetically pleasing way. And he's got very sharp angles almost to him. But he looks safe. He's at the back here with his Bora Hansgrohe teammates, including Marco Haller, the big Austrian, number 43, also by his side, Nils Pollitt, who certainly has the brightest teeth in the peloton. Looking back as well, I saw Alberto Bettiol was with Uran. He would have liked a chaotic sprint, but I mean, I'm probably quite biased because I am a big Alberto Bettiol stan. But he is behind with Uran, I think as well. It was Jonas Rutsch as well, former Paris-Roubaix top 20 rider too, who's back with Rigoberto. Nevertheless, 10 kilometers left of this stage. We're almost done with the Stolbergsbahn. It ends with roughly 4 kilometers to go. That's when we get back onto dry land and we'll head into Nyborg. But for the time being, I don't think we're going to have any gaps here. We've seen a couple of crashes, but for the time being, it looks like the riders are home and dry. Apart from Michael Storer, who's going to lose some time, and maybe Uran, if this doesn't all come back together. But Bettiol's doing a good job at bringing this back.
Yeah, he is. He's doing an absolutely hero turn here. Who have we got? Is this Ruben? No, it's Bissego who's been brought back. I am a little bit surprised that unless this is a mechanical problem, I am surprised that Bissego wouldn't have been brought back sooner. But perhaps it's just because Jonas Rutsch has just pulled off. And perhaps they were trying to use as little resources as possible. Perhaps Bissego's now just been brought back because Jonas Rutsch has kind of popped, so to say. And perhaps they just need that extra man just to kind of close up to the back of the convoy, because they are probably very close to the back of the convoy. And yeah, Bissego, of course, the man who didn't have a particularly kind of great time of the TCSA, you can see him bandaged up a bit, but he should be the horsepower that Iran needs to really get to the back here. He is a supreme time trialist, is Bissego.
Yeah, Stefan Bissego, great time trialist from Switzerland. Still a very, very young man who could get up to good things at this Tour de France. We head into his home region on Saturday once we go into Lausanne, Olympic City. We'll see what he can do there. Number 174, this is Alex Kirsch out the back still. Number 145 as well for EF Education Easy Post. That is Owain Doull, the Welshman, who's out the back. Number 172 as well for Trek Segafredo. I believe that's Tony Galopin, who is off of the back. And they're not far away. 25 seconds with 9k to go. I also have a feeling that they left Bissiger in the bunch because they thought that the stage might be more chaotic than it was. Once they got over to this sort of lower part of the bridge, the team car were like, okay, nothing's going to happen. You can go back and help your teammates now.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's always a possibility. We have changed direction a little bit as well, which might explain why the speed in the front group is quite slow. We've gone down to 30 or so kilometers an hour, which is quite slow for a peloton.
It is, and I'm also just quite surprised by how big Iran's group is. I thought it was only going to be I thought it was the EF riders, the DSM riders, Stora, but there's actually quite a few riders here, probably upwards of 20 who got caught out by that crash as Bissiger bandages on both knees, manages to bring Iran back to the peloton. And hopefully they'll all get a little bit of respite before the pace increases again to the finish line, where you'll need to put in another big effort to try and keep up with the pace.
Exactly that. 8.4k to go. We can see now it is Quickstep Alpha Vinyl lining up. Seneschal is going to be used up a lot earlier than we thought. Number 53 is going to anchor them at the moment at the front. That's Andrea Bajoli. We can see EF now join the party, but behind it's still Quickstep Alpha Vinyl, who are trying to bring forward Fabio Jakobsen. We can see Bike Exchange working for Dylan Groenewegen, the man named after Greenways. Is he going to try and win in Nyborg? Certainly a possibility. Jasper Philipsen as well looks to be safe for Alpecin Fenix. No major sprinter has been tripped up yet. Luca Monzato is also towards the front. Total Energy have done a brilliant job for Peter Sagan, who's brought a quite formidable train, which includes Anthony Turgis, Mathieu Bourgodeau, Daniel Oss, Edvald Bosen Hagen. It's quite an all-star sprint train that we haven't really discussed all that much, but he's Peter Sagan after all. Also, Groupama Française des Jeux, looking to keep David Gaudu safe, the Petit Prince de Bretagne, the little man from Brittany. Similarly, through the bunch, Wout van Aert getting swamped a little bit. He has to try to find his way back towards the front of the peloton. Also trying to find Pogacar in the melee, but I would assume that he too is safe.
Yeah, I think if Pogacar was at the back, we'd probably know.
Exactly.
We've got Thibaut Pinot on the front, actually, which is definitely kind of confirming what has been said in the media, that Pinot isn't going for GC in this race. I believe he is going for stages, which isn't too kind of far-fetched of an idea, really, when you consider that he's won a stage of the Tour of the Alps early this year, and he won a stage of the Tour de Suisse recently as well. So Pinot is looking decent and is putting himself to work for the team on the terrain, which perhaps doesn't suit him as much, so that he will then go and do his own thing in the stages that come, which are a bit more mountainous and a bit more to his liking.
Exactly that. 7 kilometers to go, and the peloton just rolling through. UAE have a lot of riders towards the back. I can see Micah is out towards the back. Also, George Bennett. And here we go. Total move towards the front. This looks like it's Mathieu Bourgodeau of Total, who took a stage win in Paris-Nice down in the south of France earlier this year. B&B Hotels battling as well to make it towards the front. They have Front Bon for the GC, but it's currently them and number 212, Cyril Barth, who was in the breakaway earlier today, trying to punch a gap for Luca Monzato. Luke Durbridge is trying to bring forward Dylan Groenewegen. Also, Jan Tratnik working for Fred Wright, and also to keep them and Damiano Caruso safe. Haller is bringing forward Danny van Poppel as well, who could be a good bet for a finish like this. DSM as well. They have Dainese, don't forget. A Giro d'Italia stage winner in Reggio Emilia. Can he step up and win a stage of the Tour de France? It's certainly possible for the Italian. We haven't seen an Italian win a sprint stage of the Tour de France since Elia Viviani back in 2019. But with 6.5k to go, there's not long left, and the peloton, it looks like they're all rushing towards the front. This is where things could go wrong.
Yeah, certainly this is where there's an opportunity where things could go a little bit pear-shaped if all riders all want to get to the front. That's always the chaos. And then there's just maybe an overlapping of wheels and another crash, which hopefully doesn't happen again. Luckily, lots of the riders who did crash earlier are back in the pelotons. We zoom in on Chris Froome again, and it looks like lots of riders are kind of huddling over to the right-hand side of the road compared to the left side. You got a quick step on the left-hand side of the road. Next to them is the Ineos Grenadiers. On the right-hand side of the road, you got Total Direct Energies, Bahrain Victorious, and Bike Exchange Jayco. And then you've got the other teams like actually Trek Segafredo are now trying to punch their way up towards the front with Quinn Simmons for Mads Pedersen to try and take the win here. He will be wanting to try and get the win here, because if he does so, he will get, importantly, as well as the win, which will take him close to the yellow jersey of Yves Lampaert.
Exactly, he'll be awfully close to the yellow jersey if he does this today. And he's got his train, his very, very well-drilled train of Tom Schoens. We've also got Jasper Stuyver here to help him. And it's going to be punching through to see if they can get the win with Mads Pedersen. We went through his hometown earlier today. And can he get this? The Viking from Denmark to get a historic home victory. It's the youngster Quinn Simmons from the United States coming towards the front with the ginger beard, just cutting a hole in the air to bring his man forward. Kamil Gradek is done for Bahrain. His job is over. Now it's down to Jan Tratnik. Florian Seneschal moves towards the front. So Bajoli is finished. We can see behind him, it's Kasper Asgreen. Behind Asgreen, we wait to see who it's going to be, who's following in the wheels. This looks to be the number 54. Behind him, Yves Lampaert with Mikkel Mørkøv and Fabio Jakobsen. In August 2020, we didn't think Jakobsen would ever ride the Tour de France. He's here making his debut in 2022, and he has a big point to prove after Cavendish was omitted from this squad. But Jakobsen, if he takes the win, this would be another miracle story. Nevertheless, Seneschal pushes on. 4.7 to go. And it looks like the sprinters' trains are coming into place. Bike Exchange trying to find their wheels too for Dylan Groenewegen. Ineos Grenadiers, you can see Pipo Ganna in the melee, trying to keep their three leaders, Martinez, Yates, and Thomas, safe. Van der Poel washed away at the back, or in the middle of the peloton, we believe, but they're going for Jasper Philipsen. I haven't seen him today, but Alpecin de Koenig are very good at a chaotic last-minute sprint train.
Yeah, they certainly are, and I think that's perhaps what they're going to be banking on. I think that's also a strategy which Trek Segafredo might be trying to go with, because they don't have the biggest lead-out train. And like you say, it's a very well-drilled squad, but perhaps not the biggest in terms of kind of all-out manpower. And it's going to be a matter of timing it to perfection to try and get the win for Mads Pedersen. There's just two kind of prongs on the road now. You've got Lotto, Jumbo-Visma, and Alpecin de Koenig now, as we were just saying, emerge on the left-hand side of the road. On the right-hand side of the road, which is where the peloton is now being spearheaded by Quick Step. And you've also got Bike Exchange on this side as well. Yves Lampaert is sat in about fourth wheel. He is ready to try and deploy Fabio Jakobsen as we have 3.6 kilometers to go now.
Yes, this is Matteo Cattaneo at the front of the peloton right now. And here come Jumbo. Bursting through, Wout van Aert is right at the front of affairs. He has Christophe Laporte to try to open the door for victory today. Sylvain Dillier is wrestling with the bike to try to bring Jasper Philipsen right towards the front of this peloton. He has Vuelta a España stage wins to his name, but none at the Tour de France. He came so close last year, and he's going to try and make the difference here this year. Pushing through as well. Trek Segafredo working for Mads Pedersen. Laporte is up at the front now, so they're almost down to their last rider for Wout van Aert. Can he get the stage win and move into the Maillot Jaune? That is the ultimate question. DSM as well, moving forward for their man, who is Alberto Dainese, but we're under the 3K to go banner. Pogacar, Roglic are safe in terms of time gaps. Pogacar is right at the front, but if they crash right now, they will not lose any time.
Yeah, that is certainly that's something to watch out for. Is that they will all be given the same GC time if there is a crash now. But we got a couple of corners here, so it's going to be important to try and be towards the front of the peloton. You get there is a crash. Number 36 for Ajay Dejah. Bob Jungels. Yeah, but luckily he will be given the same GC time, which is important because he has been looking very good. And it's just not really, I don't know what happened there. He just perhaps banked the bike over a bit too much, a little bit too hot into the corner. but he's straight up onto his bike again. So he's
Oh, big
got
crash.
no
Big crash. Oh, halfway down the peloton, a big crash we saw. Oh, there's Nils Pollitt's been caught up. Alexander Vlasov's been caught up as well. A number of riders from EF Education First, Groupama, have been almost obliterated. Florian Seneschal on the ground. A rider from UAE, but it's not Pogacar. This is very close to the front. Pogacar there almost came down. Oi, oi, oi. A narrowing of the road. A number of riders on the deck. It's held up the peloton, but we are underneath that magical 3K pointer. Yeah, UAE lose one rider, but Pogacar, I'm not sure if you saw that on the left-hand side of the picture. He was bumping shoulders there with one of the riders, and all of a sudden, it seems like the peloton is just held up. I was confused as to why Asgreen was throwing his arms around, but it seems like it's all under control. Back at the front now, 1.6 to go, Asgreen on the front.
Yeah, and this is Quick-Step's prime spot now. They've got Asgreen, Catania, they've got Lampard, although I believe that there is Jakobsen trying to come up on the left-hand side. No, Jakobsen's right on the wheel. Quick-Step really have this drilled, and it looks like they are in the box seat to try and take the win here. You got Woutman on the wheel of Fabio Jakobsen. He's just bumping shoulders with a bike exchange rider, but you've got Jules Zimmermann on the front now. Ewan, 1 kilometer to go.
1K to go. It's under the Flamme Rouge at the Tour de France in the first road stage of this year. Oh, there's a rider from Antamarche there who almost took down Michael Matthews. Michael Matthews now looking around trying to find Dylan Groenewegen, but the communication seems to have broken down between these two new teammates. 800 to go. It looks like Yves Lampart's going to guide them into this corner. Lampard takes them round. In the wheels, it's a rider from Trek Segafredo pushing round Laporte and Wout van Aert as well in the wheels. Mads Pedersen's trying to glide his way onto the right wheel to move him towards the front. Jakobsen as well is, we believe, in the right place to take this. It's a rider from Alpecin de Koenig as well, trying to move into place. It looks like Lampard is just still on the front, grinding his teeth with 500 to go. It's down to Jasper Stuyven now, the chocolate maker, with Mads Pedersen, the hometown favourites, behind him. The Danish Viking wants to take a historic home victory, but is it possible? Laporte along the barriers. Wout van Aert up there as well in the green skin suit. Stuyven's opening the door, but here we go. It's Mads Pedersen who launches first. Pedersen is the first to go for it. Wout van Aert's going to try and come round, but Pedersen's still in front. Wout van Aert still pushing round now. Is there enough time for Wout van Aert to take it? Wout van Aert and Jakobsen on the line. It's Jakobsen who takes it. From the hospital bed to the sky, it's the victory on the Tour de France Stage 2 in Nyborg. And it's Fabio Jakobsen who proves that Quick-Step Alpha Vinyl are the quickest team in this Tour de France. Quickest against the clock, quickest in the sprints. Wout van Aert's dethroned. They might lose the Maillot Jaune, but they have the green jersey on the back of Fabio Jakobsen potentially, but it's a sprint stage victory for Fabio Jakobsen who takes it ahead of Wout van Aert and Mads Pedersen. And at the last minute, well, he wasn't particularly well placed there, but Yves Lampard did the lead out of his life for his teammate Fabio Jakobsen, and this is quite the fairy tale story from that horrible crash in the Tour of Poland to a victory here in Nyborg in Denmark. Fabio Jakobsen, I mean, teamwork makes the dream work, but this certainly feels like a Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale.
Yeah, it really does. That was such a well-deserved win. Quick-Step.
I think we've just lost your audio there for a second. I'm afraid we haven't. Are we back up and running there in terms of the audio? I'm not sure if we're connected audio-wise, but that's quite the historic victory for Fabio Jakobsen. I'm afraid we're still not there with the audio. I'm not sure if just check to see if there's any technical difficulties. There we go, we're back.
Oh, we're back. Okay, good. So, yeah, will it be...
Oh, I think I tempted fate there for a second.
I was thinking if Wout van Aert's going to be in yellow now.
Oh, there we go.
I think he should be.
Oh no. It seems like the audio is just fading in and out there for a second. I mean, it's a shame. We just saw the end of a fabulous sprint stage. And I mean, it's characteristic for the rest of this commentary in terms of technical difficulties. But Fabio Jakobsen takes the stage win, trying to work out who finished in second place there. But I believe it's Wout van Aert who takes the silver medal on this stage. That will, however, I think put Wout van Aert into the lead of this race. Pogacar's just coming across the line. I think he actually had a puncture in the end. So Pogacar will not lose any time. He's smiling still, but he had a puncture in the final 3 kilometers of racing. He comes across the line alone, but that will not affect his GC effort. So we have the top 3. It's Jakobsen ahead of Wout van Aert and Mads Pedersen. That's the top 3. 4th place for Danny van Poppel, a good sprint from him. Jasper Philipsen in 5th. Peter Sagan in 6th, a fantastic finish for Jeremy Lecroc in 7th. 8th place for Dylan Groenewegen. 9th for Luca Mozzato and 10th for Ugo Hofstetter. That means the yellow jersey is Wout van Aert. So there we go. Wout van Aert finally gets the yellow jersey at the Tour de France. We can see Angela Citroën crossing the line with Bob Jungels, we believe, and Ben O'Connor. I'm not sure if Ben O'Connor came down in a crash. But the headline there, Jakobsen takes the stage. Wout van Aert takes the yellow jersey. It's what he wanted yesterday. It's what he's been wanting for years now. And he finally gets it. So happy days all around for the Benelux camp. The Danes can be happy with a bronze medal today from Mads Pedersen. He launched maybe a little bit too early. Seems like patience is key for Fabio Jakobsen, who takes the stage win today. Anyways, it's not the best note to end on, but we will get back to you guys with our post-race analysis, which will be on the main Cycling Day channel to compensate for our extra channel live stream. But we thank you all. You can check out Patrick's channel in the description below if you want to check out his Velo Games stuff. It's a shame that you're silent now. You've been muted. You were silenced for the final part of this commentary. But there we go. It worked now. There we go.
Oh, good.
There we go. There is a God. He's on our side. Thoughts on that final sprint since we missed your input?
Quickstep really had control of it. They had loads of riders towards the front. They got a little bit swamped by Trek when Stroman came to the front. But yeah, Pedersen just hit out maybe a little bit too early, which meant that Jakobsen could kind of sit in the wheel and then burst around them at the end. But I think that it was really deserved from Jakobsen. I think that Quickstep really deserved that, and I think that Wout van Aert will be relatively happy picking up a good amount of green jersey points and going into the yellow jersey. I think that he'll be relatively satisfied with the day, even though he didn't win.
Ooh, I'm just seeing the reason why Fabio Jakobsen and Peter Sagan were having a disagreement. They're both wrestling for the wheel of Wout van Aert, and Peter Sagan thinks. I think Peter Sagan's thinking that Jakobsen didn't give him enough room, as we see the Jasper Stuyven then move along. I think Stuyven should have gone out of the way a little bit more, in my humble opinion. But Sagan frustrated that Jakobsen messed up his lead up to the sprint. But a brilliant sprint from Danny van Poppel, it must be said, as well. Good effort from him. But a yellow jersey for Wout van Aert, he can be happy with that one. A green jersey as well is his, and a polka jersey for Magnus Court. Anything else to add before we say farewell?
I don't think so. The Great Bill was a little bit not what we were expecting, but still a pretty decent sprint at the end of it.
Exactly that. The Storbelbron wasn't quite as great as we were expecting, but nevertheless, we have a worthy stage winner, and it's not Mark Cavendish. It's Fabio Jakobsen who takes a stage win at the Tour de France. The fastest sprinter in the world, no doubt, with the most sprint wins this year, pips Wout van Aert to the line. Anyways, that's everything from this video. Stay tuned to this channel for the preview that will come out later on for tomorrow's stage that goes through Sønderborg in Jylland of Denmark, the main belt of land, and also stay tuned to the main Cycling Day channel for more content, including our post-race analysis, which will be coming out later on. Thank you everybody for watching, and we will see you around.